time, weather, and
Audio Jungle.
Welcome to my channel today. I truly appreciate you being here. And before we get into it, I would like to ask a favor that if you like this video, please like it and more importantly, share it, because there's no way this is going to be getting out via the algorithm. And just for FYI, I make these videos kind of more for myself than for getting the word out. So not getting the word out really doesn't bother me that much, because if I help just a couple of people understand through my eyes, because I'm just a few steps ahead, maybe been preparing or reading history, or, because I can't be the only old fat Marine out here. And my goal, I don't make any money on this channel. Matter of fact, YouTube won't even allow you to monetize your channel until you have 1,000 subscribers. I'm not anywhere near that. So if you like this, what a statement I'm about to make, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and share. Because I had to look into myself today for being so angry. I feel as if I'm like a match waiting to be ignited, and today I may have been looking to see what I see as a possible future, and it pissed me off. I have a website, and this channel, the YouTube channel, were created merely as an outlet for the problems I cannot be the only ones in the world to see what is coming to our shores. I initially started stacking over a year ago, and now that the initial reality shock of the Federal Reserve has set in, my mood is turning to anger. I have become a old, not so fat anymore pissed off Marine. One thing that pisses me off is that now I feel obligated to state I sincerely have no desire to hurt anybody, and I'm not threatening anybody violence. Having to state this disclaimer is simply a sign of how careful the citizens have to be on the internet. I am simply a societal, harmless, and historically inspired, pissed off stacker. It annoys me that I have to listen to numerous YouTube channels, and they have even resorted to using code words that they have to substitute so they will not be banned from the internet or YouTube or whatever platform they happen to be on. Banned. Think about that. By saying the wrong word, you get banned, and you definitely get your algorithm throttled back. Why? Why does content created get scrutinized and censored in any way? Why is one subject banned and another is not? Who elected a company to dictate a person's voice? What pisses me off is that censorship exists in America and it's accepted. What really also pisses me off is the way my mother passed away almost 10 years ago. Yeah, I guess I got mommy issues, but she was virtually destitute because she and my father trusted in the institutions within America. From my childhood, I watched my father go to work all the time. In fact, to this day, I associate my father with Pepsi-Cola, as he was there more often than when I saw him. He worked in the same place from like the end of World War II until he passed away. I have fond memories of his loyalty to Pepsi, and it was routine to have him tell my friends to get rid of the Coca-Cola when on the porch. Yeah, that was back in the day when kids used to go outside and play games and stuff on the porch. Almost 4 decades of work at Pepsi-Cola, he retired. My mother depended on that pension, and the banking system stole her retirement through inflation. By the time my mother passed away, inflation stole my father's pension, my mother's pension, and any money she had left stored up. During the last 5 years of her life, all of the children had to kick in to ensure she was taken care of. she would have ended up destitute because even Social Security was and is a shill game. I think my dad's pension after like 30 something years at Pepsi was slightly over 300 a month. It's designed, you can't survive despite a lifetime of work. As my knowledge of how the banking system really works, fear set deep inside of my very being. I felt as if the whole thing would collapse any day, and I was in a mad dash. As the year of preparation has gone by, that fear has started to subside as efforts have become a reality. The feeling of fear has been replaced by one of dread. The true awakening of Old Fat Marine is the reality that there really is nobody in power that gives two shits about you or me. All my years of campaigning and trying to protect the process of America have been a sham. Both of the political parties are nothing more than self-centered men and women with ambitions that are for their own benefit. The people have spent decades arguing with politicians while those that are really pulling the levers of power are behind the curtain. And if you did not realize that the story of the Wizard of Oz is all about the Federal Reserve, then you really have no clue how long this scam has been going on. And as I continue to prepare, I now understand that the fear just turns into a jelly that settles into my gut. I listened to the Economic Ninja, which I totally admire, and his mantra is to be prepared and not scared. I'm not scared anymore. As basic everyday items of today have been accumulated, that fear has turned into dread. Since we now realize American media is merely propaganda, many sources have popped up trying to get the word out. Listening to how deep some people believe the government corruption goes is mind-blowing. I was listening to some conspiracy theory guy yesterday, Health Ranger Report, and he talks like my deceased wife about dumbs and stuff like that. You just don't know what's true anymore. I know many of the tales of doom are merely in the minds of these people because nobody really knows what is coming out here on this very controlled internet. Old Fat Marine is pissed off because the sunshine from American greatness is vanishing, and it's a failure by design. This design was revealed merely by reading the book The Creature from Jekyll Island. The joke is on America because they already know that every single program paid for by the U.S. taxes has been a dismal failure down through the decades. Billions and trillions of dollars of loans that were collateralized by the U.S. taxpayer through the decades, all of the programs failed. No, they failed the American taxpayer, but the people who profited from the loans, they're doing just fine. I will not even waste a second listing them here because the documentation of decades worth of events is thoroughly done in the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which you most likely still have never read. I love this statement that either the long history of failed economic policies paid for by Americans with either genius or quite possibly the dumbest rocks ever in the box. There is not one positive instance of Americans having to pay for the economic loans to other nations. There's a 100% failure rate. In fact, I challenge you to name one U.S. government program that is a success. Start with the post office, end up with Social Security, and then talk about the war on drugs, war on poverty, drugs and drug cartels in Mexico. Okay, you see a pattern here? Are they that dumb or are they that smart? So why am I a piss stacker? Because my father committed to his family after fighting in World War II, and all of his efforts were stolen away through inflation. I am pissed it has taken years for me to see, and now the basics are in place to prepare. and disgust is setting in. I am pissed that this situation exists, and today I find myself using each day to prepare some more. What I see coming is going to be so bad that many Americans will not be able to handle it. I watch Ukraine refugees, and then I remember New Orleans with the dead bodies left in the street, and I see a future most Americans are clueless about what is coming. I am pissed because I watched the life of my parents get taken through planned inflation, and I just want to ensure it does not happen to me or my children. I see a really bad storm coming by the end of this year, 2022, and every day is another day to dig my foxhole a little bit deeper. And for you Marines, yeah, I know we don't call it a foxhole, we call it a fighting hole. But I don't want to use the word fighting hole because that might be inflammatory. So taking a chit to deviate from Marine Corps lingo so I don't offend anyone. But today is another day to dig my foxhole a little bit deeper. Preparation has become something beyond a passing thought. I am a piss stacker because once the truth is revealed, the fear goes away and dread sets in. I cannot stop what is coming, and I will do nothing to attempt to prevent it because I know my place. I merely will use the remaining time I have left to reclaim my health and be able to move my body weight in all situations. And also have enough cash, money, whatever you think may be. I want to have some so I can eat, even in the thick of it. I guess I'm a prepper, and it pisses me off that it has to be that way. Semper Fi.
Ask yourself how much income tax you've paid over your lifetime. Much of it has been silently siphoned away into the hands of those who own the system. Yes, this system has owners. Who they are is an even bigger secret that we'll get to shortly. But first, we need to understand the mumbo-jumbo of the so-called debt ceiling. It's all based on a huge paradox. There was interest due on that bond, and there was interest due on every one of those loans that the banks made. That means that there is interest due on every dollar in existence. Let me ask you something. If you borrow the very first dollar into existence, and that's the only dollar that exists on the planet, but you promise to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where do you get the second dollar to pay the interest? The answer is that you have to borrow that one into existence and promise to pay it back with interest as well. So now there are $2 in existence, but you owe $4, and so on and so on. The result is there's never enough currency to pay the debt. There is always more debt in the system than there is currency in existence to pay the debt. Therefore, the whole system is impossible. It is finite. It will come to an end one day. What would happen if the government stopped borrowing to do deficit spending? Are the payments on those treasury bonds going to stop? What would happen if the public stopped borrowing and going deeper into debt? Are your house and car payments going to stop? No. There is a payment due every month on the principal plus the interest on every dollar in existence, and those payments do not stop. If we stop borrowing, then no new currency is created to replace the currency that we used to make those payments. Whether you're making a payment on a loan or paying tax to make a payment on a bond, the portion of the payment that goes to pay off the principal extinguishes that portion of the debt. But the debt also extinguishes the currency. Currency and debt are like matter and antimatter. When they meet, they annihilate each other. If we just pay off the principal only on all the loans and bonds that exist, the entire currency supply just vanishes. So if we don't go deeper into debt every year, look what happens. The whole thing goes into a deflationary collapse under the weight of those payments. Politicians and pundits alike talk about balancing the budget, paying down the debt, and living within our means. They don't understand that that is deflationary. It is impossible to do under our current monetary system without collapsing the whole economy. This is why any talk of a debt ceiling is not only ridiculous, it's delusional. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt just to continue. And that's why politicians will always kick the can down the road and raise this so-called debt ceiling over and over again until the whole system finally collapses under its own weight. In other words, they don't want it to collapse on their watch. The Founding Fathers of the United States knew the dangers of central banking and fought to free themselves from this very thing. The Revolutionary War started out as a tax revolt, but now we must pay tax just to have a monetary system. Having just suffered through the hyperinflation of the continental dollar, which was printed into oblivion to finance the Revolutionary War, they understood the dangers of fiat currency and debt-based monetary systems. So to protect future generations from institutional theft and out-of-control government, they wrote into the Constitution that only gold and silver can be money for the simple fact that you can't print them. Our current system is not only unconstitutional, but it robs us of the liberty and prosperity our forefathers fought and died for. We are all feeling the effects of ignoring the Constitution right now. By forcing more currency into circulation, our purchasing power is diluted. Inflation is a slow and insidious stealth tax that is simply the result of this debt-based monetary system. This system empowers and benefits those who create the currency and receive it first, as they get to spend it into circulation before it has an effect on the economy. They're stealing purchasing power from you and transferring it to the banks and the government every hour of every day because of this false monetary system. And it's not like the people at the top don't know this. To quote the Federal Reserve, the decrease in purchasing power incurred by the holders of money due to inflation imparts gains to the issuers of money. This is a fraud. It is a pyramid scheme, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and it's a lie. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. But here's the biggest con job of them all. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it has stockholders. There is no federal agency that has stockholders. What's a stockholder? A share of stock represents a percentage of ownership in a corporation. So the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners. And you can see it for yourself if you go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally issued to the largest banks in the United States. But because of mergers and acquisitions through the years, you can't actually trace who owns the stock in the Federal Reserve. That's a very closely guarded secret. My guess would be that the owners are those primary dealers, the banks that get to make a profit by selling part of our national debt, those bonds, to the Federal Reserve, who buys them with a check from nothing. Then we pay tax to pay the principal and the interest on those bonds so that the Federal Reserve can pay the banks a 6% dividend. Don't be alarmed if you don't quite comprehend the deception of this system at first glance. Very few people do. It is purposely complex. The economist John Maynard Keynes once wrote, "By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft." I believe that presented correctly, anyone can understand this system, regardless of how complex it is. So let's do a recap and break it down even more. The way the system works is that, step 1, the government creates glorified IOUs. These bonds increase our national debt and put the public on the hook to pay it back. Step 2, IOUs are swapped to create currency. The Treasury sells the bonds to the banks. The banks then turn around and sell our national debt at a profit to the Federal Reserve, which they probably own. The Federal Reserve then opens its checkbook that doesn't have a penny in it and buys those IOUs with IOUs that it writes, checks, on a checking account that has a zero balance. Then they give those checks to the banks and currency just springs into existence, and then the whole process repeats. This results in a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury, which is really just a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the numbers in the various branches of the government, and we get to step 3. The government spends the numbers on promises, public works, social programs, and war. Then the government employees, contractors, and soldiers deposit their pay into the banks. and we get to step 4, where the banks multiply the numbers by magically inventing more IOUs through fractional reserve lending, where they steal a portion of everyone's deposit and lend it out. That currency gets redeposited, and then a portion is stolen again, and the process repeats over and over, magnifying the currency supply exponentially. Then we work for some of those numbers, which brings us to step 5, where our numbers are taxed. We pay tax to the IRS, who then turns our numbers over to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on bonds that were purchased by the Federal Reserve with a check from nothing. Then we get to step 6, the debt ceiling delusion. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, step 7, the secret owners take their cut. The world's largest banks own the Federal Reserve. Those banks make a profit selling our national debt to the Fed. They make a profit when the Fed pays them interest on the reserves held at the Fed, and the Fed pays them a 6% dividend on their ownership of the Fed. This system is fundamentally evil. It funnels wealth from the working population to the government and the banking sector. It is the cause of the artificial booms and busts of modern economies, and it causes great disparity of wealth between the rich and the working class. And it is only possible because we no longer use real money, we use currency. But worst of all, it is a form of enslavement. Bond is the root word of bondage. Whenever a government issues a bond, it is a promise to make us pay tax in the future. Nobody asked you if you wanted to pay tax today for the prosperity we all enjoyed in the last century. Nobody is asking our children if they want to work hard in the future to pay for the prosperity we're enjoying now. George Washington once wrote to James Madison, "No generation has the right to contract debts greater than can be paid off during the course of its own existence." By stealing prosperity from tomorrow so we can spend it today, we enslave ourselves and future generations. Now, this all sounds pretty bad, but there is great hope, for you are the greatest threat to this false monetary system. This system relies on the public being ignorant of its workings. Please share this knowledge with everyone you know, because an informed public that fully understands the system can build a better future for generations to come. And now I leave you with this quote, widely attributed to a former director of the Bank of England. "The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in inequity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money and control credit, and with the flick of a pen, they will create enough money to buy it back again. But if you want to continue as the slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and to control credit." This is the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. It's located on Constitution Street, and that is just as much of a joke as the New York Fed being located on Liberty Street. Both of them are unconstitutional, both of them limit our liberty, and they transfer wealth away from us every second of every day to the Federal Reserve, to the government, and to the banking sector. You are now among the 1 in a million who can detect the theft of your prosperity. So the big question is, what can you do about it? 1. Watch this video until you can describe and teach it to others. Those who understand this system can make preparations for its unavoidable collapse and protect themselves. History shows that those who don't will probably be wiped out. 2. Share this video with everyone, especially those you care about. All it takes is a mouse click or two to get this message in front of millions. Post this video on Facebook, tweet it, email it to loved ones. Please share it wherever you can. 3. Join the conversation. The current world monetary system is based on a 300-year-old design meant to enrich a few at the expense of the many. There must be a better way. At hiddensecretsofmoney.com, we've created an open-source platform for the design and development of a new world monetary system. We're calling on every economist, every student, every college, every bright mind, and anyone who cares to join the discussion. In educating ourselves and each other, we can prevent the further loss of our freedoms and maybe, just maybe, win some of them back.
I think your episode 4 is very beneficial, very helpful. It's going to introduce these ideas to a lot of people, and like I've just been talking about, we have to change people's mind, and the more they understand it, the better. And I think we're at this point now where more people in the last several years, 4 or 5 years, have thought about the Fed than they ever have in the previous 95 years. So I think an explanation and diagrams to show it is very helpful, because quite frankly, they're not going to get it in their grade school. They're not going to get it in their high schools. They're not going to get it in college unless they're in a very rare circumstance to understand how this works.
You know, for years before I got involved in really studying gold and some of the things I write and talk about today, I was a monetary economist for decades. You know, in your video, you talk about the primary dealers. I was chief counsel and chief credit officer, one of the largest primary dealers for 10 years. So I had an inside seat on the Treasury market and have the privilege of working with several former vice chairmen of the Board of Governors, Manley Johnson and David Mullins, going back to the 80s and 90s. So I'm very immersed in what you were talking about. And I thought it was extremely accurate, extremely clear. I didn't think you were stretching on any points. It was really like something out of a PhD course, except that it was very easy to understand. I think it's accessible. I think we're seeing a little bit of a revolution in communications in the following sense. You know, as you point out, the Fed was created in 1913. Well, in 1913, there was no web, there was no YouTube, no Twitter. There was really no one to kind of stand up and oppose the Fed or call them out, if you will, or really get into a discussion that everyday Americans could follow. That's not true now with social media and everything else. You can reach out to millions and tens of millions of people and tell them what's going on. I think you've done that. You've done it successfully. I applaud it. I think this is a great video. I look forward to seeing it again. I know millions of people will enjoy it.
Well, as we know, the Federal Reserve believes it can create money out of thin air, not realize money is supposed to represent real products and services. And what people don't realize is when the Fed does that, in effect, as Keynes pointed out, it's a form of taxation. It's a form of confiscation. And because people don't see it, the politicos get away with it, but it also undermines social trust. It just is corrosive throughout society. We're going to have a lot of turmoil in the coming years, but it's going to be the kind of turmoil that leads to positive things. So don't despair. Get out there and fight, because the tide is going to turn. This is going to be the status last stand.
Thank you.
This episode of Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money was brought to you by GoldSilver.com and the new Silver Pegasus Round. To learn how to protect your family and turn the coming economic storms into opportunity, visit GoldSilver.com.